Hello. Is that any better? Okay, I'll hang on to this side then. My name is Valerie Johnson, and I'm very proud to be the president and CEO of D.R. Johnson Lumber Company, which is a second and third generation owned family sawmill and laminated business down in Southern Oregon. Our flagship mill, which is still running, the mill that my parents began in 1951, and our glulam beam plant and now our CLT plant, which has formerly been known as Riddle Laminators and is now known as D.R. Johnson Wood Innovations, are located in this small town of Riddle in rural Oregon, in Douglas County, which brags that it is the timber capital of the nation. So needless to say, timber is in our blood. It's in our family. It's in our communities. It's in our employees. And it's very, very important to all of us that the industry survive. I've often said that I don't know if sawdust is in my blood or between my ears, but I can't imagine doing anything else. It's such a fascinating industry with so many different aspects to it that the average person might not even realize. But we are very, very respectful and appreciative for the industry and have great affection for our employees and the communities. In spite of and throughout 2 decades of heated political debate between the industry and our rural communities versus the political arena over public forest management issues, it's been tough to still believe in the future. And it's been hard to not be cynical about the way we're being treated. But we are more determined than ever, and we think an opening in this conversation with the advent of building with wood and more recognition of the attributes of building with wood, and that's what keeps us determined to stay in the fight and to prove that there are some very, very beneficial aspects to the work that our rural community and our employees do, as well as the industry as a whole. And as you heard Dean Thomas Maness of Oregon State this morning say, that I remember him saying, let's be sure we are creating as many jobs as we can from every board foot that does come out of the woods while we settle the public management issue. I'm sorry, is the microphone really irritating? I don't know quite how are you doing okay? All right, well, thanks for hanging in there with me. I was asked to speak on why we decided to go into the manufacture of CLTs. And it actually began quite by happenstance. Oregon State's College of Forestry, they hosted and invited a group of industry executives to come to Corvallis in November of 2013. One of their guest speakers was Michael Green, who you all probably know is one of the biggest evangelists of building with mass wood on the planet. And it was a very persuasive presentation, much like you heard them make this morning, but it was really coming from a very new and very exciting point of view to those of us who had been kind of demonized, actually, over the last 20 or 30 years, that there was a need for our product and that there was even possibly new products and new ways to build that could make us even more important. So coming home from that event and going back to my co-owners and our executive team, I was reporting to them about it, and we started mulling it over. Oregon State needed some test panels. We've been making glulam beams for nearly 50 years. How hard could it be to make some test panels? So I committed our company to that and then discovered what I was asking them to do. And by the end of creating the test press to make the test panels, we were kind of hooked because it started to make more sense to us every day. We rationalized to ourselves, we already make what they're now calling this new fancy name, mass timbers. We make glulam beams that are up to 9 feet deep, so almost exactly twice my height, 20 inches wide, about half my width, and 140 feet long, which is a pretty big piece of laminated wood. we realized that our plant virtually had half of the equipment we were going to need to consider extending it to make cross-laminated timbers. And it fit into our company's model, sort of our DNA. It's another great engineered wood product that's custom made for custom jobs. We can do this. And then we also had a little extra incentive because we realized that Europe has been doing it for over 20 years. And by golly, if they can do it, we can figure it out too. So let's get going. It just happened very, very quickly. As I said, the meeting at Oregon State was in the late fall of 2013, and by the spring of 2014, we had been doing our due diligence. We'd investigated what and how mass timber was developing outside the United States, what potential there was overseas, but more than that, we were starting to get a handle on what kind of interest there might be right here at home. We immersed ourselves into investigating the product, the manufacturing process, the standards, and the certification it would take to make this happen. And by the summer of 2014, we began collaboration with a very key partner, USNR, who is one of the largest and oldest sawmill equipment manufacturer in the United States. They didn't make a panel press. They really didn't even know if they wanted to make a panel press. Nobody'd ever needed one before. But by golly, when we went to them, they were good enough to assign a young MIT graduate, a young woman, who didn't have a full workload yet, to collaborate with us in between our company and her, our fabricators who were 50 years old, and their certificate was in life experience. I mean, their degree was in life experience. They started working in it, and by the fall of 2014, we sent a few of our guys to Europe to get a firsthand look of what was going on over there, and came home and started, gave USNR the go-ahead. Start rough fabricating that press, which they did. And by the spring of 2015, our press was finished, designed by our own fabricating team, and installed, and we were ready to begin making test panels. That same summer, of course, APA was the testing third-party certification agency, but they had never had anyone ask them to test panels before. So they had to devise their own protocol and their own testing requirements to determine whether we would be appropriately certified. They had that in place by midsummer of 2015. We sent our test panels to them, and with just one exception of a panel that they needed us to remake and send back up there, our panels passed with flying colors. And by August of 2015, I'm very, very proud to say that we were the first CLT manufacturer in the United States to achieve structural certification. And we're very happy about that. Thank you. Beyond that, we were in business. We now could ship real product to real jobs. And thanks to Western Oregon University, who had gone out of their way to design a building that they were building on their campus there at Monmouth, we had a few panels, a truckload or two of panels that went into their building. And right behind that came a wonderful developer, ReWorks? No, I'm sorry, the name left me, ReWorks. Aaron and Lever Architecture, and they were designing a 4-story building in North Portland and also were determined to build it with mass timber, CLTs and beams. So those shipments began, and those are some pictures of the panels as they're being put into place. So as you can see, the whole process was a genuine team effort, and it was a full collaboration from the very beginning. I just want to be sure that I give a shout out to, again, Oregon State and the College of Forestry there, who were not only helpful but encouraging every step of the way. The state of Oregon was ready to step up with some modest grants from their economic development arms, Oregon Best and Business Oregon, but it was enough to provide that economic incentives for us to do the testing and to put our toe in the water and feel confident to go forward. The University of Oregon, a huge surprise to us. There's probably some ducks out there, so I'm not even going to go there. But good luck. Good luck. When is it? Tomorrow night? Tonight, tomorrow night? Good luck, ducks. Beavers are out, but good luck to you. Actually, our deep beaver women are in, so maybe we'll go further than you guys will yet. At University of Oregon and their Department of Architecture, who just have been wonderful. They came out and said, we're realizing we have not taught building with wood for 40 years, and we need to reach out to the architects in the community and be sure that they understand how to build with wood and how to love building with wood. And so the city of Springfield, a shout out to Mayor Lundgren out here in the audience and her determination to put a cross-laminated timber project together. I've already mentioned USNR, but I want to impress on everyone in this room what a valuable asset Ethan Martin is at WoodWorks. He's a structural engineer. His job is to help you work through the details of any wood constructed project. So if you just want to buy him a cup of coffee and sit down and kick ideas around, he is your man. He is experienced and he is qualified and he is very, very just straightforward with his information, and you would find him to be tremendous help. And then, of course, there are just lots of brave architects and engineers out there who are ready to work their way into tackling how to build with mass timber, and hats off to them. And last but certainly not least is a structural engineer who was recently retired. His name is Tom Williamson. Some of you may know him. I think he's speaking here tomorrow, in fact. He actually chaired the committee that wrote the USCLT handbook, and so we really had an expert on our team that from the very beginning that was essential. So why is this still important to all of us? You've heard our story now, and thank you for bearing with me. We're proud of it, and it's exciting. It's been an exciting 2 years. It's happened quickly, and there's been a tremendous amount. You could have put everybody interested in mass timber in a phone booth 2 years ago, and today we have 500 people here. So it's really quite exciting to see the growth. But we know, everyone in this room knows the benefits of building with wood. You heard all about it this morning. It's renewable, it's grown by the sun, it captures CO2 and it releases oxygen. It's sustainable. We have great forest management laws that require the replanting of the trees that we harvest, so there's always going to be more trees out there. And you heard Dean Maness say this morning that it's plentiful, especially right here in the Pacific Northwest. We grow the best, strongest building product in the world right here in our Douglas fir forests, with no competition. And then frankly, more from the aesthetics, it's not only beautiful, but human beings are drawn to wood. Human beings love to touch wood. They love to look at wood. It's just a beautiful, natural building product. There's a renowned British architect, Andrew Waugh, who I ran across a quote from him in an interview he did with Zine magazine. Andrew is from the United Kingdom, and he said, "This is the beginning of the timber age. Building in wood is super fast, super accurate, and also makes the most amazingly beautiful spaces. These are buildings that feel very good to be in, very robust, and very solid." That's, I think, accurate, but it's also quite something to say that, because who wouldn't like to work and live in that kind of an environment? I'll try to, am I running out of time? Getting close? We are passionate about this building system, not only because we've chosen to participate in it, but also it's because we do believe in our souls that wood is the superior building material, and that mass timber construction is absolutely a logical way to begin to utilize more and more of it. Some of the benefits are obvious probably for all of you, but every glulam, for example, just in our own plant, every glulam beam and panel are custom made for the specific job. Our panels, maximum panel size right now is 10 feet by 32 feet in layers of 3, 5, and 7 lambs. We have learned a lot about prefabrication, precise fabrication, so that the beams and the panels go to a job and just set right in place. I think some of those, you see that panel being flown right there off of, it's being lifted right off of our truck by a crane and moved over on top of the job, and it just sets right down exactly where it's supposed to be with a 1/16 of an inch variation. And we can get closer than that, and will. Now that we have bought a Hundiger, which is a CNC routing machine, or as our 86-year-old mom can't quite get her tongue around humdinger, so she calls it the humdinger. And she's right, because it does a lot of really wonderful things. It can dowel, and it can cut on all sorts of angles and do whatever the architect and the engineer can dream they want or need. And so our CADWorks managers are working with 3D modeling, and it's added a whole nother dimension also to our glue lamp beam business, because it's we're finding that the marketplace is ready for that, and we're moving into the 21st century. So wherever we can save on waste, wherever we can save on time, is something that's desirable in the marketplace. One of the benefits that isn't maybe really fully recognized, and I want to reach out to my brethren in the sawmill businesses, is that since CLTs are made with just standard kiln drying dimension lumber, we are hoping that mass timber will also create new and bigger markets for the sawmills that we need, because after all, engineered wood is a secondary manufacturing. We still need the primary manufacturing. We want to be sure that you all understand the link up of that. This won't cut into your market, it will add to it. It's going to be a valuable tool when we restore our ill and overstocked forest health, and hopefully create a new market for those small size logs, because it does not take a high grade of lumber to make panels, which we hope is also going to be a boost to rural economies and create more jobs by both the logging of the unhealthy forests and the building of the panels. There's significant construction savings. I think you may have already been hearing about that, but there are many jobs around the world that have been completed with an estimated completion savings time of about 1/5 of the time with 1/3 of the workers of alternate building systems of concrete and steel. And this may strike home for any of you that live in large cities or here in Portland. Our Portland neighborhoods are a little grouchy about infill redevelopment. Our construction site with mass timber is quieter. It's a smaller staging area. Instead of clogging up the whole street for 2 blocks, we pull our truck up. The panels are loaded in exactly the reverse order. The last one off the truck is on the bottom. The first one that comes off the truck is on the top. Crane reaches over, picks it up, and it pets it right in place, comes right back, and it's a sequenced delivery. And there's no warehousing, there's no extra storage area needed on the job site at all. And to follow that up, because we do the prefabricating, the pre-cutting, there's virtually no waste, wood waste to be disposed of on the job site, which can be not only very space consumptive, but it's also quite expensive in the city to dispose of it. And it's possible that down the road, with enough mass wood buildings structures being in existence, maybe 50, 60 years down the road, and there's another urban renewal, some of these buildings, they literally can deconstruct the building, taking the mass timber panels out, move them to another location, and reconstruct a building with them somewhere else, recycling panels and mass timbers. So what I just want to kind of start working toward a wrap-up here is to emphasize that you may hear from some of the speakers here that there are certain topics that haven't been fully solved or haven't been fully vetted. And it may sound like obstacles to you, hindrances to moving forward with this mass timber revival or revolution. But I want to push back on you and say that every one of those subjects is an opportunity for us to roll our sleeves up and work together and solve whatever the issue is and keep moving forward. This isn't where we have to lean back in a rocking chair and whittle our thumbs waiting for some magic guru in the sky to solve this. These are bite-sized pieces. And again, we put a man on the moon, or I say this to my kid all the time, put a man on the moon, we can surely figure out what connectors we need, what fire resistance code needs to be written, and so forth. So in addition to the much testing that's going on all around the world, there are also, it's been kind of an eye-opener for me. In the U.S., if we haven't tested it in the U.S., it's not a test. I mean, it's not. We have got to test it again. Doesn't matter how many times the Italian tested it or the Japanese or the Germans. The U.S. has to test it again because that's just how we roll here. So we do have a lot of testing going on in the U.S. Oregon State is continuing much research, fire testing and shear wall or seismic testing, and testing even alternative wood species maybe coming out of the dry interior forests, what the strengths values are of those in panels. Our own companies pursuing our own fire testing research with Western Fire in Southwest Washington to get our panels certified. And just one more example, the U.S. Department of Defense is extremely interested in mass timber, such a solid, such a hardy system of building. And they have teamed up with WoodWorks, thank you again to WoodWorks, and are doing blast testing, which is required for military bases to have a certain blast testing resistance. And we've shipped some panels to them and hope that they will pass swimmingly, and that would also be a whole new market for us. So I'm getting the wrap up from my daughter here. Thank you, honey. I am ready to conclude, and I'll just jump to 3 or 4 quick points. How is this good for the larger timber industry? I've already mentioned it. It uses dimensional lumber, and so I think it does benefit sawmills that make dimensional lumber. But I also have picked up a few other things, and I'd like to just mention them to you. The public begins to see these beautiful wood buildings and understand the environmental advantages of building with wood. Public perception will and is even starting to become more positive and more supportive of wood and lumber and timber industry. I'm already amazed at some of the support we're receiving and from what corners it's coming from. People that I'd been fighting over timber management for 30 years are suddenly excited to see what we're doing. People I'd considered adversaries are expressing good wishes and hoping that this prevails. So it's resonating. The fact that wood is a superior building product is resonating. We're also beginning to see some reconnection of the urban and rural. I think the urban folks are beginning to understand that rural communities are truly decimated, their economies. It's having social repercussions and a lot of problems. And they're beginning to understand that anything we can do to create good family wage jobs in rural Oregon or rural Washington is a good thing for the whole state. Because where does the bill come? If nothing else, where does the bill come? If those things aren't solved there, they're going to come back to the state budget, and that's becoming more and more of an issue. So hopefully the divided urban and rural situation could be improved at least slightly by this. And finally, secondary manufacturing is good for the whole industry. I've mentioned it a couple times. I won't go over it again, but we use dimensional lumber, and secondary engineering wood products will add rural jobs that will bring a new, well-trained pool of employees into the industry. So finally, I just want to ask, who isn't here? What do we need to finish this coalescence of all of the interested and invested parties in this? I would say to you, we need to reach out to more contractors. We need to reach out to more developers who are maybe hesitant. They're hearing horror stories about the cost or the this or the that, and we need to get them in rooms like this and help start educating them on what the facts is. And the other entity are building codes or the municipal decision makers, the overseers of whether this is possible or not. And we're finding niches of those folks that are excited about this and wanting to work on their codes and wanting to help us. But let's reach out to them when and wherever we can. So there's one last quote that I would like to read because I think it really does summarize actually that we don't need to talk about, wouldn't it be great if mass timber construction happened? Won't it be great when it happens? It is happening now. And Alex DeRicci, the director of a London-based firm called DRMM, said, "The 17th century was the age of stone. The 18th century was the peak of brick. The 19th century was the era of iron. The 20th century was the century of concrete. The 21st century will be the time for timber. Let's go get them."